3 photographs I showed you a couple months ago when I went out to shoot in Shinjuku. It was this session that started something for me because I received multiple comments pointing out that I should try to photograph people from the front and not cowardly sneak up to them from behind. And that was great feedback. I hadn't realised that half of my role were people's backs, and there's nothing in particular wrong about that angle. However, I do see the point being made that it is more powerful at times to see a person and their expression to enhance the story a photograph can tell. Also, coming from behind is the path of least resistance, which usually is not the path to the best photographs. It was, however, only in Japan that I even began dabbling more in street photography, and so there was a lot of practice ahead, and that is what I've been showing you the last couple of weeks. Towards the end of my time in Japan, I thought of an exercise to practice photographing people front-facing. I had done this before actually, and decided to do it again in Japan, and that was to use my phone as my camera. Because nowadays people are so used to seeing everyone running around with a phone and people casually taking a picture of something with their phone. The device doesn't stand out the way that a camera does. That's the reason why many street photographers prefer a small, inconspicuous camera over a big and bulky one, to not stand out and capture candid moments. By taking this a step further and just using my phone, I believed I could slightly relieve the stress that comes with photographing people from the front, and consequently it works as a form of practice. And so I went out feeling weirdly unequipped with just my phone and began shooting in a quiet neighborhood of West Tokyo, from where I made my way to the train station where I knew that it would become busier. So I was starting off slow and easy, mostly just details of the neighborhood that intrigued me. Also, I really like how the editing turned out on this one. By the way, in case you're wondering, all of these photos were edited in the Enhancer mobile app, which can add film simulations to your photos, but I'll speak more on that later. I found this random tennis ball quite amusing and think it works nicely as a geometrical photograph actually, with all the lines and the ball being a circle amidst them. I shot these pictures because I was intrigued by the texture and the flow they had due to the way the yellow net was lying. As said, just capturing some details of the area. Then I passed a construction site and decided to try to capture the scene and one of the workers. Here's the result, and I think it's alright, nothing outstanding, but I like how I was able to frame the work in the lorry's window. Then, this shot I actually like a lot. It's super simple, and I think that is in part what makes it good, but one thing that stands out to me is the frozen motion of the person hopping into the car, which I find makes the scene more interesting than someone just walking or standing around. Here, I wanted to get a shot of the unusually empty street and just that one person walking this way. This is what I got, and I think it unfortunately turned out to be a bit of a miss again. I think it's a neat example of the subject just not being that interesting. The person is simply walking this way and is just part of the photo for the sake of having a subject, but they themselves are not really that remarkable. Here, I spotted a runner coming my way, and so I framed up a shot and hoped that they would come into it. Luckily, they did, and this is the result. I think this is actually a perfect example to show the opposite of the other photo, which was kind of boring. Personally, I find this much more intriguing because the person is running. Also, it seems like the hottest possible outfit for a day that really wasn't that cold. But it's of course not just the subject that makes the shot better. I find the composition more interesting and how there's an empty space of concrete in the foreground that the subject then conveniently fills. These two shots are okay. They were more of a practice of pointing my camera at people. Photographically, I find that these shots feel a little too cluttered in a distracting way, and so it doesn't work too well for me. Here, I liked this lone bike and tried to find a couple compositions with it. Here's the detail shot, which I think is pretty cool. This one is interesting. As you might know me, I like triangles in my compositions, and here's a cool one I find of the three people, two from behind and one from the front. I think the dynamic between the subjects makes for an interesting scene. Here, I was attempting a minimalistic shot of the building's wall with that person as the point of interest. This is what I got, and sadly I think it didn't work out that well. It's not a bad photo, but it also isn't as minimalistic as I was hoping it to be. It feels too cluttered for that. This one is way more minimalistic and concentrates on lines, shapes and colours, which I think makes for an interesting composition, even though the subject is super random. Here I shot a quick photo of the delivery person. The result isn't too bad, I find, but I wish there were another person maybe further in the background to add some more context to the photograph. Currently it feels like it's missing a little something. As I was wandering around here on the lookout for some more photo opportunities, I found another composition of three and attempted a photo. This is it, and I like the composition. The three are pretty interesting, and the way they just sit there busy on their phone while in the background the world seems to whiz by. Photographically though, I think it would be so much better if the sun happened to shine just a bit further so that it actually hit them. The fact that they're in the shade takes away from the emphasis that is on them, which I miss a little. Here, I came to a spot that gave me a decent angle to photograph a couple people passing by. This one is quite nice, I find. I like that the subjects are relatively close and add a strong emphasis to the foreground to balance out the shot. Because I feel like all the leading lines are adding weight to the left side, and so the people seem to act as a counterweight on the right side. This one is a good example for a version that doesn't work. The way the subject is weirdly not quite aligned with the pillar at the back feels off, and the foreground is too empty because the subject is too far away. This shot, on the other hand, I quite like, mainly because of the shadow, I think, which for me adds an extra element of interest that also fills the void in the foreground. So even though the subject is pretty far away, the weight doesn't feel off and the subject just feels right in that position. That also might be assisted by some leading lines or the fact that the shadow's corner is sort of pointing at the person. Then I came across this worker busy doing something on top of this lorry, which I found pretty interesting, so I tried to photograph the action. really like this upward angled composition with the tiles above the person. And the worker on top of the lorry is just somehow intriguing to me, not the usual place to spot a person. What I enjoy furthermore is that they weren't just standing around, but actually in the midst of something, and especially in this second shot that becomes clear. Not that I can figure out what they're doing, but it certainly makes for a neat photograph, I find. Then, before we continue, let me show you the app I used to edit these photos. It's called Dehancer. Dehancer is an editing tool that simulates the look of film based on loads of research and experiments with real film, and it aims to reproduce the characteristics. The depth the team has gone into for research is really quite impressive. You can read a lot about it on their blog. So the way it works is that I open a photograph or video, yes, you can do both, and then first you change the source material in basic things such as white balance and tint. Then you choose your film stock, and this is not a filter, it's the base, and then you continue to edit your photo with the other tools such as compression, which compresses your tonal values. You can further adjust brightness and contrast in the printing tab. Another important tool is the color head, which lets you adjust the colors of your image, and then you can even apply effects such as halation, bloom, or grain. It took some time for me to get used to editing in the app because it's such a different approach from what I'm used to in programs such as Lightroom. But once I got the hang of it, I realized how crazily powerful this app is, so I'd highly recommend that you give it a try. By the way, Dehancer is not just an app though, it's actually a plugin for Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve and other editing software. The team gave me a promo code, by the way, in case you decide to purchase the plugin and you want to save 10% and support me. Also, note that they've updated the purchasing methods so that you can now also rent a license if you need it just for one specific project, for example. Anyway, I strongly recommend that you check this out if you like your digital photos to get a film look. I'll leave an App Store link in the description. Big thank you to Dehancer for partnering with me and supporting me. Then, by now, I had come to Tachikawa Station, where the energy picks up and there are people whizzing around everywhere, and not just that, what I find fun here is how they've built multiple layers to walk on, such as this bridge that I came to know. The shots I was able to get here so far were pretty mediocre and not remarkable though. I do however like the colour of the subject's clothing here, but apart from that, this shot too is kind of random. This photograph on the other hand, I like a lot. To my surprise actually, it doesn't really have a clear subject, it just shows this long road, but I think I like it for the documentary feeling it gives me. It documents rather broadly what Tachikawa in 2023 looks like, which in 20 or 30 years time will probably look somewhat nostalgic. Even now, with the warm editing, I find it sort of nostalgic. I really like this one. Then, at the same position, I spotted a neat angle at which to photograph a person standing below. I think this one turned out really cool. If I'm not mistaken, I think the person there was stretching their body, which naturally works as an interesting pose, I suppose. But the main reason I shot this initially was the composition with the shade. The photo is split in 3 shapes more or less, and in the one dark shape, the shade, there isn't much, but the subject stands out there, and what makes it work is the white cap. In a previous photo, I said that the shade takes away from the emphasis on the subject, however here the shade is almost the thing that my eye feels drawn to, and in there suddenly there's a bright pop, which is the subject, so this one feels right to me. Next, I had come to this area at the train station where I found this cute bunny statue, and so I tried to photograph the people passing it to maybe capture a photograph that has the 2 subjects interacting in some way or another. Here are 3 examples, of which I like the last one the most. I think I prefer this one because it's closer and more clear what I'm photographing. The people passing add some interesting points to the photo, however, I'm afraid the idea with the bunny didn't really work out. I don't feel like there's any sort of either connection or discrepancy here that would make the scene intriguing. Next I spotted this guy just standing around in the middle of the passage, which was interesting, and so I went for the bold move and just passed them, turned around and got the shot. This is it. It's interesting, certainly not terrible, but also not quite there yet, I find. I'm thinking what could maybe improve the photo is to be bolder and just go a little closer, but also the lighting was unfortunately unfavourable, with the face being in the shade and the background being much more present. Then, as I came onto the escalators here, I shot a couple photos because I was liking the angle. Here are two photographs I shot, and I think they worked out quite nicely. I love the angle, it feels a bit different to what I usually do and somehow dynamic. In the second one, I enjoy the addition of the cyclist at the back. However, it would work so much better if I had been a tad bit faster so that the bicycle didn't uncomfortably collide with the head of the person on the escalators. So I really like this shot for the same reason as the other establishing shot that I got of the road. It's a broad photograph, but it doesn't feel empty. The lines of the crossing help with that, and here is a second version in which I even have a clear subject, which also helps, but I think I even prefer the first, even though it seems less clear. I don't really know. I think I just need to sit on these for some more time. Here I saw a cyclist that was about to enter a nice subframe, so I waited. This is the result, and I like it. The composition works pretty well, and the subject is fun. They seem kind of peaceful on this fine sunny day. As I passed this tight passage on my left, I spotted someone who was about to come out into the sunlight, so I framed up a shot. This is the outcome, and I think it's pretty interesting. It feels very minimalistic with a focus on textures and a very clear subject. The composition is a bit extreme, but I kind of like that. The placement is intriguing, I find. Then here I walked up just a bit of these stairs and decided to stop and wait here because I saw some potential in the composition. Soon enough, someone entered the frame. This is the result, and I think it's pretty cool. I love how the composition seems to wrap around the subject and really concentrate the focus on the person. Also, I'm so happy with the real movement I was able to capture here. It looks so natural, and just as a bonus that I didn't know I was going to get, but I'm very happy about it, is the mirrored effect at the top, which I think is kind of cool. I really like this one. And then it's time for the final shot of the session. I was actually already heading home, but kept the GoPro on just in case I see something on these escalators, and indeed, I shot some photographs of the people on the opposite side with the person in front of me on the right side of the composition. Here are the results, and I really enjoy this one. I love how every person in this shot is wearing a hat, and there seems to be a nice flow to the photo, how the eye wanders between the person in front of me and the person in green on the phone. And with that shot, I ended the shoot. I was feeling pretty good about this morning, and now retrospectively, I think I did quite alright. This was definitely great practice to build up that courage to photograph people from the front. Not in an intrusive way, I do always try to keep my distance, which sometimes made the photo not as good, but I do think I got a couple good shots. So as a form of practice, I can definitely recommend this. Anyway, before I say goodbye, I would like to thank the lovely Patreon community for supporting me in my work. Thank you so much. If you're interested in Lightroom presets, extra videos, or even physical postcards, you can check out my page via the link in the description. Oh, and by the way, I also have a print shop if that interests you. With that said, I shall see you again soon. Until then, goodbye.